Check your source. Check your source. Check your source. In his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, author and leadership expert John Maxwell says very simply and profoundly that the accurate measure of leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. This statement explicitly speaks to the influence that one has on those that are around them. It is about how we show up that impacts those within our sphere of influence. Though we might not readily recognize it, we are all leaders in some way, shape, or form. Not just because of title or position, but because we have influence. We have influence in our relationships. We have influence in our ministries. We have influence on our teams. We have influence through conversations. We influence through our actions and reactions. The most foundational aspect of leadership is about influence. Somebody ought to say influence. Maxwell's statement, however, doesn't just cause us to consider our influence on others, but it ought to also cause us to pause and consider what influences us. Who are the people that we allow to influence our hearts and minds and spirits? What are the reference points that we allow to shape our disposition and our actions? And what are those people and places influenced by? The output of our influence is directly connected to the people, places, and information that we allow to influence us. Can I say that again? The output of our influence is directly connected to the people, the places, and the information that we allow to influence us. And before we can find ourselves being effective at ensuring that the actions we take, the decisions we make, and the words that we speak are aligned with the environment we desire to create, we need to make sure that we address the genesis of our influence. We need to take time to assess our influences and to check the source. And in this section of James's letter to the Jewish Christian diaspora, the author continues to instruct these believers on how to faithfully live out their faith in Jesus and cultivate a countercultural, Christ-centered community in the various places in which they found themselves post persecution and scattering from Jerusalem. They face pressure to succumb to the prevailing cultural winds of the day while wrestling with the internal pressure of managing the diversity of their newly forming culture. There were rich and poor together, Jewish and Gentile together, male and female together, young and old together, and bringing so many different experiences and perspectives and influences together create tensions around the practicalities of doing life together as unique people of God, unified under the banner of Jesus Christ. And this is not unfamiliar to us in our 21st century American context. There are many who claim to be following Jesus and shaped by Christian principles that are actually cosplaying as Christians for the sake of satisfying their own personal pursuits of power and personal preferences. There's a whole project that came out under the guise of creating a Christian nation, which really was a power grab for a particular segment of the population and is now playing out in our national politics. There are a lot of quote unquote Christians who are not influenced by the teachings of Christ, but by the insecurity of their hearts. That's how we get unfair treatment of immigrants and ICE raids everywhere, every which way we look. That's how we get the big, beautiful bill with a potential of $864 billion being cut from Medicaid and $267 billion being cut from SNAP benefits over the next decade to pay for tax cuts for the billionaires and leaving millions of people without health care and food while the rich get richer. That's how we get to $50 million spent on soldiers marching and tanks squeaking through half-empty D.C. streets while veterans are unhoused and uncared for in the streets of our country. Those pretending that Jesus is at the center of it all might actually be pulling from a different source to guide the decisions they are making. But if we zoom in to our own lives and to our own context, we would discover that in our own families, in our own relationships, in our own churches, we struggle with the same kind of source issues. We can move from what benefits us over moving from what benefits everyone. We can live out of a place of centering our desire for power and position over centering serving one another. We can use the illusion of control to mask our insecurities. We can use false modesty as a cover for our arrogance, our conceit, and our narcissism. Often what keeps our churches from meaningful mission and our families from unification and our relationships from growing more deeply is the very fact that we are being more influenced by the wisdom of the world than we would like to admit. We are living from sources that might have some Christian mixed in them, but are more watered down by the ways of the world than we think. We are dealing with some source issues, family, that keep us from cultivating an environment where things are able to grow and thrive even in the midst of challenging circumstances. So we have to check our source. Got to check our source. This is the push behind the entirety of chapter 3, which begins with a warning for those who would become teachers because they would be judged more strictly. The words of the teacher carry the weight of influence. And James goes on to describe in the verses to follow the power of the tongue and our need not only to control it, but to deal with our hearts so that what comes off of our tongues matches what's on the inside of our hearts. He continues in this, our selected text today, by saying that the proof of what we know and what we believe is not found in what we say, but is found in how we live. He centers this section on the idea of wisdom. He raises the question in verse number 13, who is wise and understanding among you? What James is calling for is an examination of the lives of those around us to discover who has actually produced a life that matches what they speak about. Wisdom is not just about having knowledge, it is about applying knowledge. And this is why it matters that we check the sources that are influencing our knowledge base. Is our knowledge only what we see on the news or on our TikTok feed? Is our knowledge only the latest community gossip or the opinions of hateful and negative people? Is our knowledge only what we have experienced in our small circles and limited exposure? Or are we allowing the Spirit of God to teach us through Scripture and teach us through disciplines and teach us and shape us and mold us in prayer? Are we surrounding ourselves with people who are positive and self-aware and accountable? Are we cultivating an environment that allows for us to be influenced by the knowledge that helps us to root ourselves deeply in the principles, the power, the presence, and the promises of God? What is influencing our knowledge base? Here's the reality that James is raising in the text. Those who are truly wise don't boast, they demonstrate. Those who are truly wise don't boast, they demonstrate. After he raises the question in verse 13, he continues, he says, let them show it by their good life, by the deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom. Now, the key word in the text right here is the word humility, which actually translates better as the term meekness. Now, when we hear the word meekness, we think of someone who is a pushover. We think of someone who is timid. We think of someone who is passive. But the word in the original context was used to describe the ability to exercise restraint despite having the capacity for great force. Can I say that again? Meekness, in the original context of the language, is used to describe the ability to exercise restraint despite the capacity for great force. So when James uses this to describe the humility that comes from wisdom, what he is saying is that those who are wise are actually using controlled strength to build community harmony over advancing personal interest. The humility that comes from wisdom is not about shrinking back or letting people walk all over us. It is about having the inner security to be able to lead with restraint. That means not saying everything that comes to your mind, because everything that comes to your mind ain't productive. It means the ability to move in peace when you want to get jokers back because of how they did you wrong. It means the ability to build communities instead of building our own egos. This is exactly what our house rule for today is about. Y'all ready? House rule number 5. House rule number 5 is we don't lead from pride, we lead from peace. We don't lead from pride, we lead from peace. Can I hear y'all say that, please? We don't lead from pride, we lead from peace. That's good. Do it one more time. Type it on the comments on Facebook. We don't lead from pride, we lead from peace. When James talks about meekness and humility or controlled strength, he is describing people who have the power to dominate but choose to elevate instead. Pride says, I need to win the conversation. I need to control this situation. I need to make sure everybody knows that I'm right. But peace says, I'm going to use my influence to build something that actually lasts beyond me. And that's the difference between earthly wisdom and heavenly wisdom. This is why the kingdoms of the world will come and go, but the kingdom of heaven will be here forever. And that's the choice every single one of us has to make. And so it's Father's Day, and I'm pretty sure there's some fathers here today. They got some tools for Father's Day because they give us stuff to work with on Father's Day to put us to work on Father's Day. Now, I had some tools, right? I bought a couple of tools with me. The first tool that I brought with me is a hammer. Bought a hammer. I see, got a hammer. Bought me a hammer, and I also bought a wrench. Also bought a wrench. So bought a wrench. This is a big wrench too. Big wrench, 12 inch right here. Yeah, it's heavy wrench. Yeah, I got a hammer, and a wrench. And the whole series that we've been talking about is how to build a thriving, Christ-centered, spirit-powered culture in our lives and through our lives. So whether we realize it or not, every single one of us is building something. Every single one of us is building something. You're building with your words. You're building with your decisions. You're building with how you show up in your family and on your job and in your relationships and in the church. And the question is not if you're building. The question is, what tools are you using to build? And so some of us like to reach for the hammer. Some of us like to reach for the hammer. Like to reach for the hammer. Like to reach for the hammer. The hammer, it represents pride. It's loud. It's forceful. It demands to be heard. Even if you try to tap it lightly, you still gonna hear it. It gets results. It gets the job done, but it gets those results by swinging hard. It gets those results by controlling and by dominating. As they say, when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything around you looks like a nail. The hammer says, I'm right. The hammer says, I'm in charge. The hammer says, I'm not backing down. But here's the reality. If you swing a hammer at everything, eventually you leave a trail of damage behind you. You leave a trail of broken spirits, a trail of broken hearts, a trail of broken esteem, a trail of broken faith. People might move, but they move out of fear and not faith. That's the hammer. But I also told y'all I bought a wrench. The wrench represents peace. The wrench represents peace. It doesn't slam or shout. In fact, this wrench I have right here, it adjusts. It moves back and forth. so that it can fit the situation. It aligns, it tightens what's loose and supports what's slipping. It grips what's when necessary, and it lets go when it's time to let go. And here's y'all what I love about the wrench. It doesn't need to be flashy to be effective. It doesn't have to break things to prove a point. The force and the size can be adjusted for the specific situation it is working on so that it doesn't cause damage. It builds things that last. And I don't know about you, but when I look at these two tools today, I start thinking about how many situations I've shown up in swinging a hammer when God was calling me to move with the wrench. And this is the difference that James is talking about in the text. The hammer draws from pride. The wrench draws from peace. And whichever one you reach for tells the truth about your source. And this is what James is calling for us to wrestle with, particularly when we are in places and in positions of great influences. If we are being influenced by the wrong thing, trying to lead from the wrong place, we will influence others to follow our lead. And he helps us by contrasting what it means to live from earthly wisdom over living from the wisdom that comes from heaven. Here's what it says in verses 14 through 16. If you are bitterly jealous, if there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying, for jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy, wherever there is selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. I ain't say it, it's in the text, I promise, I didn't write it. That's what James wrote. Notice the adjectives that James uses in the text. Bitter jealousy, selfish ambition. These words only move to deeply qualify the words they describe. The phrase for bitter jealousy in the original language actually contains the idea of being passionately committed to a cause. Ambition in and of itself is not a bad thing when properly sourced and properly directed. However, the qualifiers of bitter and selfish point to the demonic danger of moving with these kind of motives. Bitter jealousy is a deep resentment filled with competitiveness. It is seeing someone else doing well and thriving and feeling threatened by their success instead of celebrating it or being inspired by it. Bitter jealousy, y'all, is the hater spirit. And I know we all like to think that folks are always hating on us and what we bring and who we are. But the truth is that more times than we would like to admit, we are actually the one hating on other folks because their thriving is exposing the insecurities we have in ourselves. I don't need to hate on you if I'm good with me. But if I'm not good with me, then it provides open opportunity for me to start looking at you differently instead of focusing on how I can grow and get better. And the truth is that this bitter jealousy is all too common in our families, in our communities, and in our churches. Selfish ambition comes from the idea of a person who campaigned to run for office to gain power, not to serve people. That sounds familiar. That sound like somebody I heard about. Somebody had a parade yesterday. It's the folks that do what they do so that they can be seen and praised, even if they have to create division in the community to get there. This is the kind of spirit whose sole goal is to be on top, to be in control, and to be served, and to be in charge, to have the title and the position. And this is the goal because it is a cover-up for their insecurities about themselves that they actually need to take to the altar in prayer instead of taking it out on people with their pride-filled and divisive action. And so James calls out the folks that will disguise bitter jealousy and selfish ambition as wisdom. He says, you are lying to yourself and God. It's in the text. I'm not making it up. The truth is that there are some insecurities and fears and self-esteem and spiritual identity issues that we try to cover up with big talk, harsh action, and self-deception. Trying to convince folks that your selfish ambition is actually vision. Trying to say that your bitter jealousy is discernment about who should do what and what should happen. Or calling the ways that you manipulate people and circumstances leadership. You are fooling yourself, you are lying to God, and you are hurting people in the process. And moving in this way, it's false wisdom that James says is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. It is using the mindset of the world to manage the work of the kingdom. It is either ignoring or completely devoid of the Holy Spirit. It is aligned with the agenda of the enemy to disrupt what God is trying to build and damaging the people that God loves. This is the kind of wisdom that doesn't unify, it divides. It's the kind of wisdom that doesn't equip, it competes. It's the kind of wisdom that doesn't grow peace, it spreads confusion and chaos. It's not just wrong, y'all, it's dangerous. And too many churches, too many families, too many communities have been torn apart not by scandal, but by unexamined, pride-filled wisdom stressed up in spiritual language. Just because you can wrap it up in churchy language in one of the 4 scriptures that you might know doesn't mean that it's sourced in the Spirit of God. And I believe we ought to be praying against and casting out every spirit that shows up and causes us to undermine other people's success when it makes us feel small. We ought to be casting out our need to always be in the front, to always be in the spotlight, and to always get the credit. We ought to be sending every demonic spirit that loves to create division and chaos by keeping confusion and mistrust and messiness going in order to maintain control back to the pits of hell so that our families, so that our churches, so that our communities can be healthy and whole and aligned with the mission of God for our lives. We've got to get pride out the way so that peace can reign, so that God's will can be done. And in fact, this is contrast, I'm almost done, that we see in that James shows us in verses 16 and 17 of the text. He says, the wisdom from above is first of all pure. I need to go back and read that again. He says, but the wisdom. I got to go back and read the but because but cancels out everything that came before it. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving and gentle at all times, willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. James gives us the markers and the result of wisdom that is sourced in false earthly wisdom. And then he shifts gears to talk about the kind of wisdom that comes from being connected to the divine source. James is painting the picture for what wisdom that builds culture, the culture of the kingdom of heaven in the lives of the believers look like. And you might want to write these down. I'm going to tell y'all, it's 7 of them in the text. So you might want to write them down or highlight them in your Bible in verses 17 and 18. The first thing he says is he says that wisdom from above is pure. Somebody ought to say pure. It's pure, meaning that it starts clean. It's not perfect, but it's undiluted. It's not mixed with self-interest. It's not mixed with spiritual performance. It's not mixed with manipulation or ego. You ever met somebody who seems wise on the surface, but the more they talk, the more you can hear the insecurity, the more you can hear the control, the more you can hear the defensiveness in every word that they speak? That's not pure. Wisdom from above doesn't need to impress. It just needs to be faithful. Told y'all the first thing is pure. The second one, James says that true wisdom is peace-loving. It's peace-loving. That doesn't mean that it avoids hard conversations. As MLK says, true peace isn't the absence of tension. It is the presence of justice. It means it knows how to pursue unity without causing harm. Yeah, I thought y'all was gonna clap right there, man. Okay, all right. Peace-loving folks, peace-loving wisdom knows how to pursue unity without causing harm. It doesn't weaponize silence and it doesn't weaponize the truth. Wisdom from above doesn't come into a room looking to stir tension. It is a spiritually mature presence that leads by walking in and saying, "How can I make this space whole again?" Wisdom is pure. Wisdom is peace-loving. Wisdom is also considerate. I think in the text it says there that it is gentle, meaning that it takes people's experiences and emotions seriously. It takes it seriously. It doesn't discard them for the sake of getting their own way or push them to the side for the sake of doing what they want to do. It hears what needs to be said and takes it all into account and allows the Spirit to guide them forward. Not only is it considerate, but it's also, this is number 4, it is submissive. The wisdom from on high is submissive, not in the way that we think of submissive, meaning that we got to give in to the ways of everybody else all the time, but in the sense that it is open, that it is teachable, and that it is not defensive. Wisdom is teachable, not defensive. A wise person doesn't have to be the loudest in the room or the last word in the room. Wise people just want to get to the truth, even if the truth comes from somebody else. And we can find ourselves seeking to understand over fighting to be understood. And we create a culture of communal safety where everyone's voice and everyone's perspective is valued and appreciated. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's number 5. James says that wisdom is full of mercy and produces good fruit. Those two go together. It says that wisdom is full of mercy and produces good fruit. It is not quick to write people off. And in a worldly culture that is quick to cancel folk for a wrong word or a bad moment, divine wisdom is not obsessed with punishment, but it's committed to restoration. Mercy says, I see what you did, but I still see who you are. It's that kind of wisdom that tackles problems while still valuing people. It's more than spiritual words. It's transformative presence in the good times and in the bad times. It actually produces something. It produces changed lives. It produces restored relationships. It produces healthy communities. You know the wisdom is real because people start to grow where it's planted. And then James ends the list with these last two. He says that true wisdom is impartial. That's number 6. And sincere. That's number 7. True wisdom doesn't play favorites. Its favorite thing is the truth. It doesn't shift based on who's watching. It doesn't shift based on who's in charge. It doesn't shift based on who's in the room. It doesn't show up one way in public and another way in private. It's not performative, but it's spirit-led. It's not loud and boisterous. It's steady and stable. It is consistent. It is honest. And it's trying to align with all of its might with the will of God. That's 7. Did y'all get them all? Did y'all get them all? True wisdom is pure. It is peace-loving. It is considerate. It is submissive. It is full of mercy and produces good fruit. It is impartial and it is sincere. And can I tell you today that we need that kind of wisdom in this church? We need that kind of wisdom in our homes. We need this kind of wisdom in our ministries. We need this kind of wisdom on our teams and in our relationships and in our circles. We need people who don't just speak peace and just say they want peace, but their actions show that they are determined to move in peace and to live in peace because they are shaped by peace. We need wisdom that is pure and gentle. We need wisdom that is teachable and merciful. We need wisdom that is partial and genuine. We need wisdom that produces peace and joy, security and safety, restoration and transformation. Y'all, I'm done. James closes the chapter in verse 18, and he says this: peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. That idea of sowing and reaping and harvesting, that is agricultural language. That's farming talk. If y'all don't know, that's farming talk. He's saying this: the kind of wisdom doesn't work. This kind of wisdom, rather, doesn't work like a microwave. It works like a seed. You sow peace over time. You cultivate it. You protect it, and in time, it produces righteousness. Because we can't sow and reap in the same season, we have to recognize that the harvest we are reaping today is because of the seeds that were planted in prior seasons. So if we are experiencing division and chaos and disorder and distance, we might need to look back at the seed, at what kind of seeds of wisdom were planted in order to get here. Were they seeds of earthly wisdom that divides and damages, or seeds of divine wisdom that builds and unifies? Because if you sow manipulation, you get manipulation. If you sow unity, you get unity. If you sow chaos, you get chaos. If you sow peace, you get peace. If you sow division, you get division. If you sow collaboration, you get collaboration, because a seed can't produce anything other than what the seed actually is. And so here's the good news for us today. And I'm going to my seat, I'm going to get my donuts, and I'm going on home today because it's Father's Day. Here's the good news: that if you don't like where you are right now, if you don't like the culture in your church, if you don't like the culture in your home, if you don't like the culture in your relationships, you have the power to change it. I know it's not real deep, but that's all I got. You have the power to change. You can change it. You can change it. Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if you want something different, then you have to move different. If you want change, you have to change. If you want to see something other than what you are producing, then you need to sow something different than what got you to where you are today. You might not see the results of it today, because again, no one sows and reaps in the same season. But I promise you today that if you keep sowing seeds of peace that come from divine wisdom, if you decide, I'm not going to use the hammer no more, I'm going to pick up my wrench and I'm going to figure out how to adjust to all of the situations that come my way so that I can do it and not cause damage in the process. I promise you that if you do that, and if you sow those seeds of peace that come from divine wisdom, and if you water the seeds that come from divine wisdom, and if you cultivate the seeds that come from divine wisdom, then eventually what was marked by pride will be known for peace. Eventually what was marked by division will be known as unity. Eventually what was marked by competition will be seen and become collaboration. Eventually what was marked by manipulation will be marked by sincerity. Eventually what was marked by confusion will become clarity. Eventually what was marked by chaos will become order. Eventually what was marked as hatred will become love. So if you want to change what's happening around you, you got to check your source and make sure that you are connected to the divine source of wisdom so that what your life is producing can change. That's it. That's all I got on Father's Day. We don't lead from pride. We don't use the hammer. And it's funny because people will talk to me as pastor all the time and say, Pastor, you just gotta get them. And I'm like, I don't want to damage. I already see enough damage around here. I can't damage no more. I want to put the hammer down, because we don't lead from pride. We lead from peace. Because I want a church that's peaceful. I want a home that's peaceful. I want family and relationships that are peaceful. So I got to check my source, change my direction so that I can change what my life produces. That's all. Let's stand. We thank God for God's word today. When you think about it, that's really kind of what Jesus did for us, right? That what God did for us through Jesus Christ. Then instead of using the hammer because of our sin, now God did send the water and flood the world, but there was a little bit of peace in there because He kept Noah. Was like, all right, we're gonna start over again. But when God recognized that the sacrifices weren't working and folks weren't changing their hearts, He said, I gotta adjust. I gotta adjust from my universal creator form into this physical form so that I can come down and so that I can show the people how to move in peace for real. That moving in peace sometimes requires confrontation, but it never causes damage. It only destroys the systems of the enemy that stand against what God is trying to do. And we ought to take on that mantle of what God did in Jesus Christ for us.